Okay, so you want to own a Hollywood movie studio. You've watched the credits roll your entire life. The same 5 names appearing before every film that has ever made you laugh, cry, or sit in a dark room completely forgetting the world outside existed. Universal, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Sony, Disney. The same names for 100 years. The same logos, the same fanfare before the story begins. You want your name up there. So you make the call. And the first thing you discover is that Hollywood is not in the entertainment business. It is in the gambling business. Every single film your studio greenlit is a bet. A bet made with anywhere between $10 million and $300 million, placed on a story, a director, a cast, and the collective taste of an audience that nobody, not the most experienced producer, not the most data-driven executive, not the algorithm that has consumed 50 years of box office history, can fully predict.
Nobody knows anything. That quote belongs to William Goldman, the screenwriter behind Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, The Princess Bride. A man who spent 50 years inside Hollywood watching studios spend fortunes on films that nobody watched, and accidentally stumble into films that changed culture. Nobody knows anything. It is the most honest thing ever said about this industry, and it has been true since the first movie ever sold a ticket. Now, the numbers. A major studio releases somewhere between 10 and 20 films per year. The average production budget for a wide-release studio film sits between $100 and $150 million. Then, the marketing budget. The dirty secret of Hollywood accounting is that the marketing spend frequently matches or exceeds the production budget. A film that cost $150 million to make will cost another $100 to $150 million to tell the world it exists. You are spending $300 million before a single person buys a ticket, and the ticket revenue does not come back to you cleanly. The cinema takes its cut first. In the opening weekend, when the film is newest, most talked about, and generating the highest ticket prices, the cinema keeps somewhere between 50 and 60% of every ticket sold. That percentage improves in your favor as the weeks go on, but by the time the percentage improves, the audience has largely already seen it. A film that generates $300 million at the global box office sounds like a success. After cinema splits, after marketing costs, after distribution fees, after residuals paid to directors, writers, actors, and crew, that film may have lost money. This is why Hollywood accounting has its own reputation. Forrest Gump, one of the most successful films in cinema history, grossed over $678 million worldwide on a budget of $55 million. Paramount claimed for years that it never made a profit. Winston Groom, the author of the novel it was based on, received nothing beyond his initial payment because the contract tied his back-end compensation to net profits that Paramount maintained never existed. $678 million in revenue. No net profit. The accounting is not illegal. It is just a language that Hollywood invented and that everyone who signs a contract in it eventually learns to read very carefully or very expensively. So where does a studio actually make money? Not the cinema. The cinema is the marketing event. The money is in everything that comes after. Streaming rights, broadcast rights, home entertainment, merchandise, theme park attractions, sequels, prequels, extended universes that turn a single successful film into a decade-long franchise that generates revenue from toys, games, clothing, experiences, and branded content long after the original film has left theaters.
Disney did not buy Marvel for $4 billion in 2009 because they wanted to make superhero movies. They bought it because Marvel was an intellectual property factory, a library of characters, thousands of them, each with their own story, their own fan base, their own merchandise potential. The Avengers franchise alone has generated over $22 billion in global box office revenue. The merchandise, the streaming content, the park attractions, the total value extracted from that $4 billion acquisition is incalculable. This is the real business of a Hollywood studio. Not making films, building franchises, acquiring intellectual property, creating characters and worlds that audiences return to repeatedly, that parents introduce to children who introduce to their children, that generate revenue streams so long and so varied that the original film eventually becomes the least important financial event in the franchise's entire life cycle. The Lion King cost $45 million to make in 1994. It has since generated over $10 billion across theatrical releases, home entertainment, Broadway productions, merchandise, and theme park attractions. $10 billion from one story about a lion. But here is where the model started breaking. Streaming changed everything, and nobody has fully figured out the new rules yet. Netflix spent $17 billion on content in 2023. $17 billion. More than the entire Hollywood studio system combined spent on films a decade ago. And Netflix does not have box office revenue. It does not have merchandise empires. It does not have theme parks. It has subscriber numbers and the belief, tested increasingly by investors, that great content drives subscriptions and subscriptions justify the spending.
The traditional studios watched Netflix arrive and made a decision that looked logical at the time and has proven enormously complicated in practice. They launched their own streaming services: Disney+, HBO Max, Paramount+, Peacock, Apple TV+. Every major studio decided that the future was direct-to-consumer streaming and that building a subscriber base was worth the cost of the content required to attract one. The problem is that building a streaming service requires spending enormous amounts of money on content before a single subscriber pays a single dollar. And subscribers are difficult to acquire, expensive to retain, and have demonstrated a consistent willingness to subscribe for one show, watch it in a week, and cancel before the next billing cycle. Disney Plus launched in 2019. By 2023, it had lost over $11 billion across its streaming division. $11 billion from the most valuable entertainment brand on earth.
$11 billion lost chasing subscribers. The streaming wars have turned Hollywood studios from businesses that made occasional large bets on individual films into businesses making permanent, enormous bets on an entirely new distribution model whose economics nobody has yet proven work at scale. And in the middle of all of this, the writers went on strike. Then the actors went on strike. The WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes of 2023 shut down Hollywood production for months. Not a slowdown, a shutdown. Every major film and television production halted simultaneously. The studios, who had spent years arguing that streaming had changed the economics of residuals and compensation, discovered that the people who actually make the content they depend on had reached the end of their patience with the argument. The strikes cost the California economy over $6 billion. The studios eventually settled. The terms improved for writers and actors. The costs increased for studios already bleeding money on streaming infrastructure. Your timing, it turns out, was complicated. So here is where you actually stand. You own a library. That is the foundation of everything. The film's already made, the characters already created, the world's already built. These are your most valuable assets, and they appreciate rather than depreciate if managed correctly. You make bets. Educated, data-informed, experience-guided bets on stories that might connect with audiences and might not. Your hit rate, if you are very good, is maybe 3 or 4 genuine successes out of every 10 wide releases. The successes pay for the failures and occasionally produce a franchise that changes the financial trajectory of the entire company. You fight for talent. The directors, writers, and actors who make the difference between a film that performs and a film that nobody remembers cost more every year and have more leverage every year because the streaming services need them as much as you do and are willing to pay to get them. You navigate a distribution landscape that is changing faster than any strategy can fully accommodate. Theatrical, streaming, direct-to-consumer, international markets, China, which can double a film's global gross or ban it entirely based on content decisions made in a writer's room in Burbank. And underneath all of it, you are running a creative enterprise, which means the product cannot be fully systematized, cannot be fully predicted, and cannot be produced by algorithm, no matter how much data you feed it. The best films ever made broke every rule the industry thought it had. The worst films ever made followed every rule perfectly. That tension between the business that needs predictable returns and the art that refuses to be predictable is what makes owning a Hollywood studio unlike owning anything else. It is the only business where the product can change culture, and the only business where changing culture does not guarantee you make money doing it. The credits roll. Your name is up there. Whether the number that follows is profit or loss, nobody knew when you greenlit it. Nobody ever does.